OK and the podcast serves as a vessel to bridge the gap between human isolation and connection. We are all going through something. However, what happens when we start sharing our stories? We will be able to connect, heal, and grow. Come with me and my guests on a journey that will uncover their OK and moment. I'm your host, Just Jess. Let's get started. Hey y'all, welcome back to OK and the podcast. I'm so excited for you to check out this episode. I had my tribe come together and we really just laid it out on the table of our thoughts, feelings, emotions of the past events, for the past month and a half. And I truly, truly hope that you take away not only being educated, but really having being empowered to have those conversations in your circles. Enjoy. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone that's listening to the podcast. I'm your host, Just Jess, and you are listening to OK and the podcast, where we are trying to bridge the gap between human isolation and connection. And today's topic is not going to be like normally we do when we talk about someone's story. We want to gather a group of young individuals collectively to share their story about what's going on during the past week and so on and so forth when it comes to police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and then just the things that we've been experiencing during quarantine. So we're going to go ahead and get started. How the format's going to be set up. So just to let y'all know, because you're only getting audio, we have about 8 women on the call right now from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. And we've already kind of got to know each other just a tad bit prior to the recording. So ladies, if you want to, say your name, a little bit about yourself. Again, I know I apologize. And then we'll go from there. So let's do quick introductions one more time for our audience that's listening to us in podcast land. And we'll go from there. So get your name, where you're located in the United States of America, and one word to describe your emotion going right now. So where you're from, your name, and what is your emotions currently right now. And anybody can start.
All right, I guess I'll start. Since I started this off last time.
Okay.
My name is Ashley. I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm 36, and heavy is the word.
Gotcha. Thank you, Ashley.
My name is Carrie. I'm from Rancho Cucamonga, California. One word to how I'm feeling right now is just numb.
Okay. All right.
Hi, my name is Morgan. I am 33 years old from Fontana, California, and very angry.
Okay.
I'm Chioma, 32 years old from Long Beach, California, and I just feel really sad.
I'm Bree. I am from Denver, Colorado, and I feel heavy. I also have been through some events today that make me feel very hopeful.
Hey, I'm Kadrin. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I feel incredulous.
I'm also Jessica, or just Jess. I currently live in northern Louisiana, and I would say frustrated is how I feel right now.
My name is Kimberly. I'm 31. I live in Inglewood, California, and right now I feel very sad. Very sad.
Okay. I think we got everyone's emotions. And my name is Jess. here in LA, and I am optimistic. So I know that's a hell of a feeling, but I'm gonna keep that going. All right. So ladies, let's jump into the conversation. We all got to know each other a little bit, which is awesome. I feel that love. I know our energy is gonna go up and down, but we're gonna start off with the first question. So this question is gonna go over to Chioma, Bree, Kim, and Kadron. And so the first question I want to ask you is, when we think of allies and we think of Black issues, what comes to mind?
I have an interesting approach to that.
Okay.
I understand, the whole term of allies and dealing with this subject matter, but I feel like sometimes it seems like Black people are like looking for the quote unquote white savior and like calling that an ally, opposed to just like having, people who agree that there's injustice and that's that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like sometimes there might be a little too much pressure put on white people to come and solve this whole issue, when just like we don't know how to solve it, they, I would imagine, also don't know how to solve it. But that doesn't mean that they don't understand it or feel it or whatever.
When I think of the word ally, what comes to mind is someone that is going to avenge. But when it comes to this, I personally am not necessarily looking for an ally. I think what's so frustrating for me is the fact that I don't understand why we can't interact on a human level. Like, that's what's frustrating to me. So I'm not necessarily looking for an ally. I'm just looking for people to interact with another human being, human to human.
Okay.
I actually, it's really interesting that you mentioned the term like white savior, because that was actually something I reached out to a friend of mine when all of this had happened, and I was like, how can I best serve what your needs are, like without coming across as trying to be the person who's saving things. Like, this isn't about me. It isn't about my whiteness. It's about how I can help support my brothers and sisters' Blackness. And it was a good conversation, but it also, like, I also have to be very aware of when I'm getting into those conversations, trying not to make it about my privilege, but also trying to support in the best way. And sometimes I think it's just about listening and letting people talk and really hearing them, as opposed to trying to listen to have something to say. I think that was my biggest struggle with getting into these conversations. I didn't want to say the wrong thing and be like left out of the conversation too. So it got very self-conscious for me, but I had to keep like reminding myself to just step back. I think that was kind of a big moment for me with this.
I think one way that I see the ally is, and for those that know me know that I'm used to being loud and opinionated and putting myself out there, and that's not what I need to be doing as an ally. This is not my time. This is not my chance to say my say. It's my time to be supportive, to listen, to hear what's being said, and yes, be an advocate and, share. I do a lot with social media, right? Share another perspective. But when you're in a protest, when you're marching, it's not center stage time, right? It's time to let the people who are directly impacted, their lives are impacted, have that moment to say, this is my movement. I'm there to support in the background and sideline with you.
Ladies, anybody outside of the four want to comment on that question?
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff is things I'm hearing and I'm seeing, and that's why, like, when I said the word heavy, it's those type of things kind of weighing down. And I think there's also some generational things going on and how we're reacting to stuff. Because I had to kind of take a moment and give out that other perspective. I'm like some of these ladies on here. It's not about us. It's not like, don't celebrate us for standing up and saying what's right. That's what we're supposed to do. Like, that's the big thing. But what I'm seeing is everybody wants to tell you how to be an ally, how to advocate for your friends. And there's different approaches to it. Like, I'm not a person that's going to be loud on social media. That's not me. One, I don't see the point in arguing with strangers. I'm not more likely to change a stranger's opinion. But what I am doing is I'm having conversations with family and friends on the side, because those are the people I can reach on a personal level and try and get them to see these inequalities and injustices. And it's a lot of times it's those type things that we can't tell you how to feel about the situation either. We can't tell you not to be mad. We can't tell you not to be sad. Like, and it's the same type thing. We can't tell others how to be an advocate and an ally, but you need to take some type of action. Sitting by is not going to work. And I think that's the big problem right now, is everybody wants to tell you how to do it and when to do it and what form it's got to take. And we can't do that. Everybody's got their own role to play in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good, Ashley. That's good. Let's go with Jess, Morgan, Carrie, and who am I missing? Ashley, we'll go back to you. I was like, Ashley, just talk. That's okay. We'll do the four. So let me ask you this question. How do we protect ourselves and others around us?
Well, can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Of course you can.
Do you mean physically, emotionally, mentally?
All of the above.
How do you mean protect?
All of the above.
So I'll kind of jump in as being a psychologist in training, working on my counseling psychology PhD. I think one of the things is protect your peace at all costs. And that's what I've been telling all my friends that I'm in contact with, however that may be, protect your peace. And how you do that is sometimes you have to unplug. Sometimes you have to leave everything that's going on. We know it's heavy. We know what's going on. And sometimes you have to tell your friends, and whether they be white friends, whether they be others that come to you and say, oh my gosh, this is going on. I'm so sorry for you. Tell them to leave you alone for a little while. Because to me, and I get what everyone else was saying about allyship, my allyship looks a little different. I am very vocal on social media. And because of that, I have had people reach out to me and say, well, what does it mean to be an ally? What does it mean to change what I've been thinking about this? And I never looked at it this way, the way that you put it out there. So back to protecting yourself, I think you have to really give yourself a space that says, this is what works for me, and this is where I am. And in the same accord of what we were just talking about, being okay that may be different than how everyone else wants to do it. Mm. So if everyone's pressuring you to protest, it's okay if you don't want to go out in the streets and protest. There's other ways to be an advocate. There's other ways to protest. There's other ways to be around. If you don't want to be loud on social media, don't be loud on social media. If you don't want to, be around a certain bunch of people, you don't have to make explanations or excuses or reasons for being that way. And so I say, again, at all costs, protect your peace, because that's all you have at this point.
So I would say, as far as protecting your mental peace, I agree with Jessica. Sometimes you have to log off and detach just to protect your feelings. Me personally, I've been logging off a lot lately. I was very active in reading the information and, watching the news when everything first started taking off. But after a while, I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated that I couldn't even function normally in my day because I was that frustrated. I live in a community that's very diverse. I grew up here. I went to high school here. I didn't experience a lot of racism in my community growing up, but seeing the shift in the people in the community with this situation, it's been so frustrating. We have a community group where before this we were giving each other toilet paper and sending people diapers because telling people what store needed this, and now it's all lives matter, and let's do a fundraiser for the police. And I'm just what is this? When I see somebody in my community say all lives matter, I'm like, you just don't get it. Either you don't get it, you're not trying to get it, and you just don't care. So that it's been extremely frustrating, and I've had to stop engaging. I've had to stop engaging because I know I cannot force every single one of the people that feel all lives matter is the best way to go. I can't change their thoughts. I can only control how I interact with them and control what I do. As far as physically, so I have a Black teenage son. He's tall. He plays basketball. He's out walking around, during the day. He's walking to the basketball court, doing things. Sometimes at night he wears a hoodie. So I find myself probably now more than ever, I have to stop him before he leaves the house and have a conversation with him about what to do if someone approaches you and they don't want you there, if they're questioning you about, do you live here? Do you live around here? If the police stop you, I have to protect him most because I'm more fearful now than ever of what can happen to him when he's outside of my home.
Protecting, at least for me, I kind of tie into basically, what Jessica and Carrie was saying, definitely trying to unplug and kind of recharge as best as I can. But I was kind of I've been, for those who don't know, I've been in, therapy, and I find myself, even if I were to unplug, it's constantly on my mind. I'm constantly, because I'm very spiritual, so I'm constantly praying, or I'm constantly just having these, I can be unplugged from the computer, I can be unplugged from TV, I don't even see anything, but it's still on my brain, it's still on my heart, it's still on my mind. So I'm constantly praying even more than I normally, just either for myself, for my own sane of mind, praying for my family members, people I don't know. And I remember just after the Ahmaud shooting happened, I remember I was walking around my neighborhood, and I had just did some walking for physical therapy wise, and I remember this young man had ran past me, and I immediately just stopped, and I just started praying. I was like, Lord, I don't know this young man in front of me, but please just watch him wherever he is running, because I just felt and I live, like I mentioned to you guys earlier, I live in Fontana, California, and it's predominantly, it's diverse, but I'll be honest with you, it's mostly white. I go to my physical therapy building, I'm the only Black person, and they only have one Black employee. And I can honestly say I'm happy I didn't go this week. And again, it's not any actual anger at white people, because I don't have an issue with white people, but I just didn't want the constant staring, the constant looking at me almost like, is she okay? I already get that on a normal before any of this was happening. People were already staring at me. So it's now this attention is higher than normal. And I was just I don't want people staring at me. So happy that I'm not going to physical therapy physically this week. But as far as protecting others, and I haven't really mentioned this to anybody because it sounds very probably not Morgan-like, but I'm 33 years old. I don't have any kids. I'm not married. And currently right now, I'm kind of temporarily disabled. But I'm literally at this point that for people who record situations like that, I get it because they want to capture it. That's unfortunately, that's the new way to hold people accountable, is to record situations like that. But I'm literally at this point in my life right now where if that were to happen in front of me, you know what? Maybe I have to be that one person that's going to make that impact and physically go and stop someone. Now, if that means that I'm not going to be here anymore, then sad to say, that just means I'm not going to be here anymore, because my ancestors fought physically for even the ounce of a future that we have right now. And if the little ounce that I can give that can make a difference for my nieces and my nephews and my brothers and my sisters and just fellow people in general, then I'm willing to do that. And it just sucks because I never thought I would say that or even have to be in the time to have to say that. But I would rather physically do something to risk my life than just to record. And that's my way of trying to protect other people, even if it means I'm not going to be here anymore.
Okay. All right, Morgan, you got me. So I'm struggling with protecting myself mentally with all this because I take a lot of stuff that goes on onto myself. I'm an educator by trade, and so my heart lies with my kids. And the high school that I teach at, it's Black and brown. And so I may not have children of my body, but all those kids are mine. And not being able to know how they are, I've been messaging them throughout all of this, like, hey, if y'all are going out right now, I need y'all to be extra careful because there are the riots going on down here in Houston. And they live in a certain part of Houston that's, not very friendly between them and the officers. And I know tensions are high. And so with what Morgan's saying, one, you're brave. Like, I don't know if all of us could do that. I would like to think I'm that brave, but I don't know. I just don't know. I know my family's been calling me, trying to make sure that I'm staying in, that I'm not going near downtown. And I'm trying to let them know, like, hey, I'm okay. But even them calling me every day to check, like, it's still bringing everything to the forefront. And I'm having to reassure them that I'm okay. So it's like I'm having to make sure everything else is all right. And I'm having a hard time unplugging because it is on my mind. I'm in a one-bedroom apartment down here by myself. And that's really all I can do is think about it. And I think about my kids I'm about to send off into the world, and that I'm sending to universities, and what kind of culture they're going to be at in these universities in the fall. And so it's just one of those things that I don't know the answer to how to protect them, besides love on them and let them know that I'm here and that I care about them.
It's heavy. Everyone take some time. You're good. You're good. We're going to keep rolling. When we think of what we can do, and everyone can answer the question, I guess. Yeah, everyone can answer the question. So the GIF that comes to mind when all this week has happened is, I don't know if you all are familiar with the GIF with the little girl with the pigtails, and she's sitting at the desk and she's like that. That's the GIF that comes to mind. most of the time, and just understanding where we're at, where we were, and where we're headed. So what can we do, like when it comes down to our local communities, when it comes down to, our friends? I think we've talked about it a little bit, but going forward, what do you think not only you can do, but what would you like others to do, from a government standpoint, from a local community standpoint? um, Hell, I'll even throw in from a celebrity standpoint, because we know they're very influential. Like, what would you want if you had a wish list?
If I had a wish list, starting within our own families, in our own communities, whether that be in our friendship groups or our professional environment, cutting down all those jokes that people make, those sly comments that people make that, they come quick with, oh, I'm just playing, or, they'll say something about a group of people and then say, oh, but you're fine. I think it starts with those little passes that, start in the lunchroom, or start off with, friends going for drinks. And then it goes home. And then it turns into conversations that are had with family members. And then it turns into community beliefs. So I think those small things, nipping those in the bud, I think could be very beneficial. Then from the media standpoint, I think recently what's gotten me so frustrated is how, in college, I had a minor in marketing, so I understand how powerful marketing can be. Heck, we all know with social media how you can curate things to look a certain way. So it's bothering me how the media is choosing to use their power to curate this narrative, to perpetuate this idea of Black people, that we are angry, that we are violent. So I would like to see a neutrality in what's portrayed in the media, to portray it exactly for what it is, without having an agenda. And then from, local government or the police force, I would just like to see people held accountable. Like I was telling my husband, the laws are in place, the rules are in place, but it's just like they pick and choose when they want to apply them. So I believe if people are just held accountable, I think we could be good. But it's the fact that they're not. That's the issue. So I would just like to see people held accountable. Period.
I got a really cool opportunity today. I think we've already kind of talked about some people in different areas, it is not possible or safe for you to go and protest. Here in Denver, Colorado, we don't typically see the violence start happening until curfew. And there's a lot of opinions on why that's happening. But I was supposed to go yesterday. And I had purchased the poster board. I created my sign. I was so excited on Friday. I had a little bit too much to drink and I was out on Saturday. But today, I don't know if I've ever been more called to do something than to just show up. I'm fully aware, not everybody can show up, especially I got a video text message from my sister about a half an hour after I got home. She lives in Seattle, and they were already shooting pepper balls off at the crowd. There are people in Southern California that, our Best Buy stores have shut down already because they can't stay open because of riots that are happening. And I was talking with a friend of mine who consistently called the protest riots, and I was like, that's not what they are. There are two very different groups of people that are involved in what's happening. You have your protesters who are genuinely trying to be as peaceful as possible. And you have people who are coming in on the backside that are saying, hey, I'm still very angry, and their anger is justified. And they may be causing a lot of damage within their communities. I didn't see any of that in Denver. And I think that's that is the work of the Black Lives Matter movement out here, and just how very clear they have been what the agenda is and how we're going to move from place to place. And one of the best moments of the day, they had all of the under 18-year-olds come up to the front where they were talking before we started marching. And we laid hands on them. We prayed over them. We laid out just hopes and dreams for how they can start to influence the future. And I don't want to say that our generation is stuck with what we have, because we can absolutely institute change. But I also think it does come down to teaching, especially with Ashley as a teacher. Like it's about making sure that we're instilling the right values into whomever it is that we're raising. I think that's the easiest way to move forward, but it's also the most difficult, because you've got a lot of talking heads that are adults that say terrible things. I mean, I hope that my parents never ever listen to this, but they're very subtly racist. And it took a lot of me learning what was racist, what was the wrong thing to say, and what was just completely not what my assumptions were as a child that I was taught, to be able to come out on everything the other side, and to feel comfortable being able to march with my brothers and sisters. Yeah, I think it's finding the ways in your community that you can insert yourself. If it's through social media, go with social media. If it's through protesting, go with that. If you can do both, absolutely go with both. But I think it comes down to the level of comfort that you have, and the willingness to stay open and to listen to the people around you, to understand when you're doing the right thing and possibly when you're not, and being able to change when you're not too.
I want to piggyback off where you're talking about the next generation. That's one thing where if I could make any change in the world and snap my fingers, it would be an overall of the way our educational system looks at history, our curriculum, because it's so whitewashed, and we're not getting the full look at what actually happened. We're not getting a worldview of events. We're getting this alternate reality. It feels like I was very privileged in my education, and I didn't learn about reality and real life until I got to college. And just having the opportunity to go to college was a privilege afforded to me that a lot of kids aren't going to get. If we don't start teaching them these things that are going to make them better humans, that are going to make them kinder humans, more accepting, more willing to listen and to hear alternate perspectives, we're not giving them that opportunity before college, they're not going to get it. A lot of your mind is made up by then. It's harder to accept things then. There's so many things I would love to do to the educational system, but I think that's one of the most important.
See, and I'm so happy you said that. And I know I was on mute, but I just had to clap for that, because I remember, and this is the smallest story I can give you. I remember I was in high school, and my guidance counselor told me something, but I forget the exact words, but she basically mentioned like, oh, something about community college. And she was already limiting me. Like, and I went home and I told my mom, like, oh, my counselor said, something about community college. And my mom was very conservative, but my mom was like, oh, hell no. My mama went up to the school and she met with my guidance counselor, and she said, don't ever try and limit my child as if she can't go to a 4-year education. And she said, don't ever tell my child that ever again. She goes, better yet, don't tell any black kid at this school that they can't get no damn 4-year education. And it just starts even like there. They were already trying to limit me to going to a JC. And there's not a knock at JCs. That's not. But if you are already trying to curb where I need to go, like that's a huge problem. Like that just starts there. And my thing is, not only does it start educationally, because don't even get me started on what we learned in history, which is nothing, good Lord, where it really also needs to actually affect change is it's systematic as far as across the board. So we have yes, we have the authorities and how they implement. And again, we all know all cops aren't bad. I have family members that are cops. I have friends that are cops. I know they're not bad. But the problem is it's a huge amount of them that are. And they're the ones that we're only hearing about. They're the only ones that we're seeing about. So you're a good cop. I don't know where you are. Please stand up. Other than the ones I actually know. But my thing is, I was having a conversation with one of my frat brothers actually a few hours ago. He was talking to his son, and his son said, he asked his son, he said, how many black U.S. senators do you think there are? And his son was like, 20. And he was like, no. He was like, okay, maybe like 15. He was like, no, keep going. And so he said, he told his son, there's roughly about 9 or 10 in history that are black U.S. senators. In history. That's 9 or 10. Now, mind you, I didn't have a chance to fact check him. So anybody that's here on the podcast, if I'm wrong, please let me know. MorganParker87@gmail.com. But when he was mentioning that to me, I had said to myself, honestly, it wasn't hard not to believe that maybe there are 10 U.S. black senators in history. So my thing is, it starts from the city, or from the local level to even the state level of, we need to change just the mindset, because right now the mindset is this is how it is, this is how it's going to be, this is how it always is. And that it needs to change from educational as well as from just that type of level in politics, because if it never changes, then the people, right now, Trump said, if they start looting, go ahead and start shooting. Mm-hmm. Are you serious? Mm-hmm. As the leader of this free country, I mean, I'm not going to call you a leader, but as you were voted and you won to be a leader, that's the message you want to give to people. If they start looting, start shooting. So it just shows you as a trickle down effect from the 3 branches and all down that it needs to be a change in there. Because if we have a change somewhere in government, then maybe it'll change the structure of education and, just even what's being taught in the education, whether it's from history, even from math, and just things that need to be tangible things that we're actually going to use in life. Let's be honest here. What we all learned in high school, other than some of the basic things, do we even use any of that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right when it comes to curriculum and the things that we're learning. And then Jess just checked for us, and so there has been only 10 black U.S. senators in history, which is insane. I know if anybody else wants to speak on it, go ahead, unmute yourselves. Thank you, Ashley.
Okay, so just on the education standpoint, we all know the school to prison pipeline is real. That's the first thing. And yeah, education is a whole nother ballgame. And the reason why I'm going ahead and talking with that, I see the little sparks of it. Here in Texas, they are going to introduce a new history course this next year in the curriculum, and it's African American Studies, right? So there are small things eventually, but we have to make sure that we're getting out to vote in these local elections and in our state legislation to make sure that they continue on. What I do, I work at a Title I school. So my kids are in systematic poverty. That's what I see. I teach a curriculum trying to get first generation them into college. I'm pushing them into AP courses, trying to make sure that they're getting this in there so they'll be on a level playing field. Because I can look across my district at a school that is maybe about 10, 15 minutes from me, and those kids are living in $1 million homes, while my kids are having to go through and take backpacks from our school pantry so that they can eat on the weekend. I see this disparities, and it comes in all shapes and forms. I have to check my coworkers
Because let me tell you, as an educator, not everybody needs to be a teacher. We have made that a fallback profession, and there's a lot of people in the education system that continue to try and oppress these students. I have to teach my students to advocate for themselves, because these teachers will sit there and keep them down if they can. They will sit there and tell them they're not smart enough to be in AP classes. When my kids are, you're not teaching them. Because since we're a lower level school and you couldn't get a job somewhere else, you decided to come here. Not everybody in my school, they got the heart for it. And so it's stuff like that. And this is where I get really passionate, and this is where I get loud. I said I don't get loud on social media.
Girl, go ahead. Go ahead. And everybody can mute yourself. You got silent applauses. Go ahead, Ashley. Go ahead.
That's the stuff I continually see. I've seen my kids where they're not getting in because their SAT and ACT test scores aren't as high as their white counterparts. Why? Because they're not getting the same quality teachers and same quality education poured into them. Therefore, now they're being kept out of better schools because they're not going to the systematic test. And it's been proven that these demographics don't score well. And so it's stuff like that. I know my kids are smart, but you got to reach them. You got to make them believe. My kids will tell you all the time that they're not smart enough. I see even with merit scholarships all the time, we need more needs-based scholarships because our students that need it aren't getting those scholarships because everybody's got to have a 3.5 GPA or above. Like, they've got to have all these extracurriculars. They're not taking into account these kids that are living in one-bedroom apartments and having to watch 4 or 5 younger siblings because everybody else is having to work. And it's stuff like that just education overall, how we think about kids and merit and everything else needs to be reformed. But that leads me into, I said not everybody needs to be an educator. Not everybody needs to be an officer. We treat that as a fallback profession. There are a lot of people that are officers that couldn't handle or couldn't make it as what they wanted to be.
Correct.
And now you put them in this system of power, just like you do in the classroom, and they exert that power and control over people because they don't know how to handle it. So I want to see people having to go through extensive background checks. I want to you go through mental health checks to make sure that you are fit for this profession. Because clearly you've got some anger and your own issues in there that you can't manage. And in situations like this, you're going to exert your authority and you're going to hurt somebody. We see it time and time and time again, and everybody's tired of it. And that's the whole thing, is why is one of the two most important professions, the one that keeps us safe and the one that educates us, fallback professions?
Ooh.
I actually can feel how important education, well, there's just the school system in general is. I didn't meet Black people, like Black American people. I'm Nigerian American, first generation. So everyone in my class were also first generation Chinese, first generation Japanese, or simply just white. But I was surrounded by all Asians and white people from elementary school until 7th grade. Mind you, 6th grade was the beginning of middle school for me. However, I was still with my elementary group, and then I turned right one day and found people who looked like me who weren't my cousins, like who weren't Nigerian. So in my elementary education, I scored into the magnet program. So now we're, higher learning. It's just a higher level of education in the public school system. At that time, I don't know what it is now. But so there was the magnet program and there was the non-magnet. We had different recess. We had a different lunch. We had different everything from the non-magnet. And the people who were in the non-magnet, because this school was located in San Pedro, California, it was like on the borderline of Palos Verdes, there weren't too many Black faces. There were totally all Hispanic. Like, they were all Hispanic. And that's how I viewed Hispanic people, like, if I'm being transparent, all the way up until I introduce myself to Black American people, because the way that my school worked so hard to keep us apart, and they, you know, we're here taking the harder courses, and we're being told that we're smarter and we're this and we're that. So then it's like, well, those people are not. So, you know, literally we were viewing these Hispanic people as just being like the not so smart kids that you can't talk to because they don't have the same recess as us. We don't have the same lunch. Like when we speak about segregation, it was insane. And it's like, we're children, so we don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And I get to 7th grade, and literally I'm finding faces that look like mine that are not people I grew up knowing since I was a child, being Nigerian, right? So I feel like it's like an at-home thing first, right? Like my parents, because they had their own stressors, these people came over here with their own focus. They just want to get their kids a better life than the one that they had, period, right? So they weren't there to teach us about what the Black Americans went through and this and that, whatever. But it's like, had they done that, then that would have compelled me to have, you know, like a mind to think about the non-magnet kids just from an elementary point. And then when I reached middle school, I would have found faces that looked like mine from the 6th grade opposed to the 7th grade. You know, I wouldn't have thought that they were the scary ones, because though I'm Black, dark-skinned, and tall, there was a difference between me being Nigerian and them being Black American. Like I didn't see them. I don't know them. Like I didn't know them at the time. So it's like I was only seeing what I was seeing on TV, you know? And as we know, it ain't always good what we see on TV about Black people. So I feel like it's like an at-home thing. It's a school thing for sure. I totally agree with that, because my school separated us like I've never seen separation before. But I also feel like it's a voting thing. Like, you know, our issues as Black Americans are so valid and so obvious and so blatant. However, it's like we're willing to protest and, you know, write full on like conversational pieces on social media. However, when we simply need to just make it to the voting booth, way too busy, or I'm not too sure what our excuses are. And then people like our current president gets voted in because it was all a vote, right? He got voted there by a number of people, and those who did not vote against him helped him get there. So it's like when that happens, we then are upset and like, how did he get to become president? And then now here we are again protesting and saying we have all of these rights, which we do, that aren't being, you know, recognized or allowed. But it's like, will we then now go and vote? Will we try at least a little bit? I had somebody tell me yesterday, because there's a Blackout Friday coming up, where they don't want any minorities to spend a dime.
July 7th, like, I believe. July 7th, yeah.
Yeah, July 7th. They're like, what's that? That's not going to do us anything. And I'm like, actually, if we want to like make them feel it, that is literally how they're going to feel it. Like, yes, they see us in the streets, and yes, they hear our cries, and even the looters and this and that is gaining all of this attention, but they just go to sleep and they wake up and it's a new day. We go to sleep, we wake up and we're still Black. We still are being literally murdered on the street in broad daylight. Like, our problems don't end for us until we literally like commit ourselves as a people, I feel, to like doing whatever it is that needs to be done. Like I keep hearing organizing, and I'm so for it, because I feel like that's literally what we need. Like, we need to get back to what it was, where there were literal like strategic organizing going on, you know, and not in a violent way, but just in a way to where it's going to have a lasting impact opposed to a 5-minute news segment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know my approach on it.
Yeah.
So if I can, sorry, Kimberly, do you want to go? Okay. If I can piggyback off that, I hear what everyone is saying on education, and I will say this: I'm a firm believer in radical change comes with radical decisions. And right now is that time for us to make those changes. And while Donald Trump won, he didn't win the popular vote. He won electoral votes. That needs to be taken out. Everything has to come from top down. We want to work at the education level, which is teaching, but how long is that going to take if we change our education system, how long is it going to take for them to get into office? We need to change Congress sitting. The congressmen who are sitting, they need to be out. They cannot have lifetime pensions for when they're there. We have to change how we're voting. We have to get away from this two-party system. That is killing us. And in all reality, if we're really being honest, as women, like I have some stuff that says feminist. I'm not a feminist. I consider myself a womanist. There's a difference. Womanist includes women of color. So as a womanist, like, we need to stand up and finally have our voices really heard. We make up 51% of the population. So I am all about radical change, and that is what is happening. And I'll be honest, like, I was super excited about when they started actually having riots, because it was a planned 3-tiered strike in Minneapolis of what they did. That was planned. These other organizers that are coming in and now making it to be a negative towards the Black Lives Matter, I'm not for that. I think that's absolutely horrendous. But the riot that started to include where he was murdered, the cop's house, and the target who refused simple necessities to people when they needed it, that is what needed to be rioted. Because it needs to be said, there is anger. And as a white ally, we need to be there to support. And we need to say, like that line, I believe it was Chicago or somewhere, of white
Kentucky
women who stood, who stood between police and the protesters. Stand up and actually be something about that. And that's the part that gets me, is that, yes, I believe in education, and, you know, Ashley and I have talked about this before, and education is super important, and I love our educators that are actually there who want to do it. At the same time, we're not going to change education until we change the 3 tiers that we have up there in our government. And so until we make that radical change that says the people are no longer going to stand for this, the people, and that is where white allies come in, is that it's not necessarily about being the white savior. It's about numbers, and get the number high enough where we say, this is what is going to happen, and this is how we're standing with our Black brothers and sisters. And that is the radical change that we need right now, because until we start dismantling that, I want to say someone talked about, Ashley, I think it was you that said about having psychological exams to get into police. There's actually a biased exam that can be taken, and it's called the Red Point exam. And I want to say that's what it's called, or laser point exam. It was something I worked a little bit with one of my professors, and basically what it is how quick is your trigger finger depending on what the person looks like. And so we really need something to be in place, because we also don't understand that the authority that comes with the power of being an officer, you are not the law. You uphold the law. You do not get to pick and choose when you get to be the say-all to be-all. You do not ever get to be that. You don't get to do that. There's so much that needs to happen, but the biases that happen, the racial injustices that happen, all of that comes into play. I could go on a lot, because we could talk about why people are coming into, that's one of my favorite ones, actually, the Stanford prison experiment. That is one of my favorite.
Talk to us about that. Either whoever wants to unmute, talk to us about that, because I'm not familiar with that one.
You want to go, Ashley?
Okay. They even have it, I believe, on Netflix. They have like a whole documentary on it, but studying psychology in undergrad, so I feel all of this right now. Go for it.
So this is in I took a bunch of psychology classes when I was an undergrad, and so that's one of those things. But so the Stanford prison experiment happened in the 70s, I believe, and Jess, you can always correct me if I'm wrong. But what it was a set of college students that were taken into an empty building, and one set was made the prison guards and one set was the prisoners.
Okay.
And the experiment was supposed to go for, I believe, a full month, and I don't think they could even make a week before they started seeing the brutality coming out, because all of a sudden now this group had this power over them. And so it's things like that you have to take into account. We have data, we have the studies, we have the blue eye experience, and we have it, and we choose to still ignore it. And that's one of the craziest things to me, is that we know when we put humans in a situation where they have power over someone else, most of them cannot handle it.
And can I add on to that, Ashley, real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to add a point to that, when they were switched after the experiment was, they saw the brutality happening, they switched to see if the prisoners, who now became prison guards, would have more empathy and more compassion, because they knew what it was like to be a prisoner. They were actually harder on the prisoners.
Wow.
They were actually more aggressive to them. And that's when it really stopped and became one of the most unethical experiments to ever take place. But yes, it's truly frightening how much data and how much everything we have out there. And again, to the laser point experiment, there's so many different different ways that we have found that you can catch biases. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to cure racial injustices in police departments by any means, but at the same time, there are ways that we are finding that you have certain type A personalities. You have certain people who have very authoritative upbringing that should not be in a policing field. You find it in the military too. So when they get kicked out of the military, they go straight into law enforcement. And because of that, they are seen as, I have the upper hand. I have power again. And that is the people that we do not need in our policing system.
Kim.
And I think it's good to touch on groupism, because as we know, not all police officers are bad or have bad intent or, come out with this hatred for any particular race of people. But being placed in a community of people who do have these different biases, and you being that oddball out, do you conform? Do you eventually just assimilate, or do you stand out? And a lot of the time, especially in the police force, just because of the backlash that comes with standing up against somebody, another police officer's wrongdoing, they just go along with it or stay silent. And that's almost equally as bad.
Yeah, and that's what I feel is one of the things that's kind of most lacking from a legal perspective as an attorney. I honestly don't feel like there will be much change in this country until there is some legal reform. Right now, the threshold for a cop to prove that their actions were justified is so low. So the reason why the cop that murdered George Floyd was not arrested quickly is because they spent most of their time trying to find video evidence to justify his actions. They were not investigating anything else but, was he resisting? How much he was resisting? What did he do? Nothing was focused on the cop's actions from the point that he was arrested and on the ground and he put his knee on his neck. Most of the investigation was focused on the video coverage of what George did to try to justify the officer's actions. So until there is a shift in the legal system about who needs to prove what in order to get these officers arrested and convicted, we will see change in, some people's personalities and how they feel about the situation. But the real change we want is we want convictions. We want arrest and convictions. And that's what's needed to get those arrests and convictions. Another issue with the system, like Chioma was saying, the legal system and the police force have this alliance, this relationship with each other that when you do something wrong as a police officer, your superiors are trying to help you cover that situation up. They're trying to justify it for you. Of course, naturally, the police officers are friends with the district attorney. That's just the way it works. When a district attorney gets a case, they get it from the police force. The police force gives them the facts. They give them the evidence. They work hand in hand. There's not many professions I can think of when you can do something so intentionally egregious and your superiors help you, help you get out of that situation. They literally will look at a situation and put the pieces together to try to make it seem like the officer was justified in his actions. So I think those two pieces are what really needs to be changed in our country, so we can actually start getting arrests and getting the convictions. Because you see, even when officers get, and this is, I probably shouldn't say this as an attorney, but I don't have a lot of faith in this officer getting a conviction. And if we do get a conviction, I don't see him serving a lengthy prison sentence. I mean, we can already see he got charged with third-degree murder, and I literally had to go look it up.
Like, what is third-degree murder? Right.
That's not something, I haven't been in law school in some years, but like, I know that I can tell you the elements of first-degree murder, I can tell you the elements of second-degree murder, and I can tell you the elements of manslaughter, but they're like third-degree murder. I'm like, I have to go look that up, because I'm like, I don't see that one that often. So when I saw that, and I saw, with the manslaughter, I was like, okay, they're already trying to, make this into something that it's not. But I think that when they bring these cases to trial and they just harbor on the fact of, who this person was, all their past crimes and, how much they resisted and what they did that day for the cops to be called, that's when, you start seeing how unfair our justice system is.
And I want to say, Carrie, and help me on this as an attorney, but I read somewhere that another attorney was breaking it down, that they did third degree very intentionally, for the mere fact that first and second, you have to prove intent on the officer. And because third is accidental death or harm that was given, that way the jury doesn't have to prove or see that the officer had any intent in killing him, but rather that it was mishandled and he still killed him.
Wow. And
so it leads for a better chance of conviction because of the way that they did that, and then leading in with following behind with manslaughter as well.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense, because, but it's like a double-edged sword. It's like you have to lower the charges for somebody that we saw murder somebody to hope that they can get some prison time out of it. It's like, it's kind of like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right. We know he's not going to serve the 25 years. Yeah. That's the max sentence. So,
Kim has a question too, and if anybody knows the answer, but are cops protected by the union?
I think it depends on the state, because some states aren't unionized anymore.
Okay.
I believe so, because I know in quite a few states there are no more unions, and so I actually saw another report that said a white cop who spoke out on social media about the George Floyd incident was told by his superior to take the video down. He did not, and he was fired for speaking out and saying that it was wrong and that it was murder.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that's one of the things that really bothers me, because it's like, in the police force, when you see somebody is blatantly doing something wrong or unethical, it's like you can't say anything. It's almost like you're hoodless, like you're not down for them like the way you're supposed to be. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm in the attorney profession, you can't do unethical things. Like, you get called out, you get reported, medical field, healthcare workers, you get in trouble. You can't just be out here doing unethical stuff. But in the police force, it's like, oh, you all good. Like, it's like they're taking care of each other so strongly, and it's dangerous because they're in such a position and they have such this connection with the attorneys and the judges that are prosecuting these cases that, it's dangerous. So, yeah.
So,
hang on, Ash, really fast. Does anybody, because it kind of ties in what Carrie had just said, does anybody know mostly Carrie, do you know? Do you know what we could do to like start the changes from the legal system? Is it like who we're voting on the local and state levels? That's where it's at?
Absolutely. That's why we need more diversity in our political system. We need more senators that have diverse backgrounds. And I'm not even going to say just Black. I'm just saying diverse backgrounds in general that will have an understanding of what's really going on in the world. Because those are the people that are going to push and fight for change and reform. Until we see that, there are going to be more George Floyds. So that's why when she said, what's the word you feel? And I'm like, I feel numb. Because I'm like, I'm not surprised this is happening. I'm not surprised when I this string of incidents, this is not the first time this has happened. It's just happening again. It's happening again. So it's like, I'm not surprised that there's protesting all over the nation. This has happened before, but I feel numb because I'm like, until our country is changed politically, our leaders are changed, it's just going to keep happening, sadly.
I have a question. I'm sorry, Kimberly.
Go ahead.
No, you you go for it.
Kim, go. You get.
I think that's why I take the approach of the home, the community, because I've been Black all my life, and I was raised with a conversation at the dinner table. You're Black. This is how you have to handle yourself. You will never be seen equal. No matter what changes in the world, you have to work harder than everyone else. You have to make sure you're on time or early for work. You have to make sure that you're better because the deck is stacked against you. I was told this at the dinner table. Now, one can say that can be a very traumatizing and oppressive and very overwhelming for a child to hear at the age of 8, 9, or 10. However,
it's a normal conversation in a Black household. It's crazy.
Like my grandmother, my grandfather, my parents were trying to prepare me. So like Carrie, unfortunately, I don't think that this, and I don't want to be a pessimist at all. I'm very hopeful because we've come so far. I'm sure no one thought that we were ever going to have a Black president. So we have come far. We've come a long way. However, I think having these conversations at the dinner table, these officials are married. I remember, some of them. I had a conversation on Friday with my grandfather, and I don't want to offend anyone, but he said, the white woman, that has the power to have those conversations with her man, with whoever, that's like, you better come home at night, no matter what. So, we're working against a family structure, but we can also have the family structure work in our favors by going into our communities, sitting down at our dinner tables, and having these conversations, because these officials, they go out into the world. My dad, he is a director of public works in the city of Los Angeles, and a lot of what he does and how he's able to move and shake is those conversations that he has with my mom at the dinner table. So I think, it may not seem like a lot, but I think the family structure, even if it's broken, the community organizations, even though they may be a bit disheveled, have a lot of power because it starts there, in my opinion. That's all I have to say.
So my question kind of ties into exactly what you just said too. I've heard from a lot of people that these protests and these riots, whatever they are, feel different. Like there's a different kind of, I guess, future involved in it. How do y'all feel about what's happening? Like, do you feel like these? I like Carrie basically. I'm gonna assume that you don't, but also I have no idea. But does it feel like these are the times they are changing?
other protests that have been in the past. I think they feel different because it's not just a Black protest now. It's an everybody protest now. So I do feel like it feels different. I feel like it's getting more ground when it comes to there's a lot of corporations speaking out and things of that nature, which I haven't really seen in the past. I do think that it's the looting that's taking place is overshadowing the message. So I think the message has gotten lost. And I think that's where the issue with the protest comes from, because it has a great message, but it's being overshadowed right now. And I think the message is being lost, and the ground that the message was getting, I think it's being diminished because when like I said, I'm in this community group with, people in my community. There's a protest in Rancho. I mean, Rancho is not it's not a lot going on out here, but they're out here protesting. And you can hear it. There's a helicopter over. It's like none of the messages about the protesters have anything to do with George Floyd. It's like they better not tear up the community. They better not block the streets. All lives matter. It's like nothing is being focused on the cops that killed this man, none of that stuff. So I just think that the protests just need to kind of get restructured, get organized again, so that the message can be clear and it can be heard, better from the people that we need to hear, which is, some of these political leaders.